We all know the greatest sitcoms of all times. Friends, The Office, How I Met Your Mother, and of course, Seinfeld. But today, I'll show you why Seinfeld stands above the rest, why it deserves the title of the best sitcom ever. And here's a twist. It achieves this without romance, drama, or moral lessons. How is that even possible?
Seinfeld premiered in 1989 and changed TV forever. At the time, sitcoms usually followed a formula. A family setting, a moral lesson at the end, or at least a romantic plot to keep viewers invested. Shows like Full House, Family Ties, even Cheers all leaned on sentimentality. But Seinfeld did the opposite. It rejected those formulas and asked, what if a sitcom didn't teach you anything? What if it just showed life as it is? It turned everyday routines into comedy, standing in line, losing a shoe, getting annoyed at people in public. Things so mundane, most shows wouldn't even bother writing them down. A sitcom built on nothing became one of the most influential shows ever. And the irony is, by focusing on nothing, Seinfeld actually captured everything about human behavior. So why did this work so well? From the very beginning, Seinfeld zoomed in on life's little absurdities. Take The Contest, an episode about abstinence without ever using the word. Think about this. It's a sitcom episode from the early 90s, airing on network television that revolves around masturbation. And yet, they never once actually say the word, not once. Instead, they wrap the whole thing in this coded language. Master of my domain, out, still in. It becomes a kind of secret code between the characters and with the audience. This is peak Seinfeld. They take something everyone experiences but nobody really talks about, and they transform it into mainstream comedy without ever breaking a single network rule. That's genius. It's hilarious, it's clever, and it's universal. Now, contrast that with The Soup Nazi. Totally different vibe, right? Here, the brilliance is in character and rhythm. You've got this authoritarian soup shop owner whose entire reputation rests on one line: no soup for you. And yet that single line has lived on for decades in pop culture. Why? Because the episode takes this ridiculous, almost cartoonish character, but roots him in something real. The idea of a business owner who has all the power over his customers. The stakes are so absurdly small, getting soup, but the conflict feels massive. That's Seinfeld's magic trick, turning everyday inconveniences into epic storytelling. So in just these 2 episodes, we see the full spectrum, taboo-breaking brilliance on one end and absurd character-driven comedy on the other. And that combination is what makes Seinfeld stand above every other sitcom. These episodes proved comedy doesn't need drama or romance. It just needs sharp observation of the absurd things we all recognize in daily life. But Seinfeld's secret weapon wasn't just the situations, it was the characters. Jerry's the anchor, the observational comic, the voice of reason. George is his opposite, neurotic, insecure, constantly sabotaging himself. Elaine brings her sharp wit and independence, but she's just as flawed and petty as the guys. And then there's Kramer, chaos incarnate, sliding through doors and somehow making nonsense feel like genius. The brilliance here is that they're all self-centered, but in different ways. And when you put them together, every scene becomes a powder keg of petty conflict. And Seinfeld doesn't stop there. The show makes sure that their quirks actually drive the plot. Take George, for example. His selfishness isn't just funny, it literally creates entire storylines. Remember Susan, his fiancée, who dies in one of the most bizarre and darkly comic ways possible, from licking cheap, toxic wedding invitations. It's such a grotesquely small, pathetic detail, but it's perfect for George. Only he would be cheap enough to pick envelopes that end up killing someone. And Kramer, his entrances alone became iconic. Every time he bursts through Jerry's door, you already know chaos is about to happen. Whether it's turning his apartment into a smoking lounge or adopting ridiculous schemes, Kramer shows how the absurd can erupt from anywhere. That's why Seinfeld works. The conflict isn't about external forces. It's not, will they get the job or will they save the relationship? It's about how their own personalities destroy everything around them. And this is where Seinfeld really separates itself from traditional sitcoms. Most sitcoms thrive on character growth. In Friends, Chandler becomes less awkward. In The Office, Jim eventually gets the girl. But in Seinfeld, nobody learns, nobody improves, nobody grows. Jerry's the same in season 9 as he was in season 1. That's not a bug, it's a feature. It's the anti-sitcom sitcom. Now, let's talk about why Seinfeld's legacy has lasted for decades. The way it turned the smallest, most mundane details into legendary television. Other shows go big. Love, heartbreak, betrayal. Seinfeld goes microscopic. Instead of, will they get married, the question is, who stole my marble rye? Instead of, is she the one, it's, what's the deal with close talkers? And the genius is that these small details stick with you more than the big stuff. Who else could make an entire audience obsessed with the proper way to eat a Snickers bar, or turn a character's bad dance moves into pop culture canon? Even Susan's death ties back to this obsession with the mundane. She doesn't die in some big, tragic, operatic way. She dies because George bought the cheapest envelopes and she literally licked herself to death. It's so absurd, so cruel, and yet so perfect Seinfeld. That's why fans can quote lines like yada yada yada, double dipping, or no soup for you decades later. Because these tiny observations, things you'd normally forget, become unforgettable once Seinfeld points them out. This structure and fearless approach influenced everything that came after. Friends, The Office, How I Met Your Mother, and countless others. Seinfeld proved you don't need drama or emotional hooks to keep an audience. Just sharp writing, characters that never change, and fearless comedy about nothing.
So, why is Seinfeld the best show ever? Because it dared to be different. It threw away the idea that sitcoms need heartwarming endings or life lessons. It proved that you can make an entire episode about waiting for a table at a Chinese restaurant, and it would be just as gripping as the most dramatic prestige television. Seinfeld redefined what comedy could be. It gave us characters who never grew, plots that made nothing into something, and lines that are still alive in our culture 30 years later. It's not just a sitcom, it's a blueprint for modern comedy. Shows like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Curb Your Enthusiasm, even Arrested Development all owe their DNA to Seinfeld. And at the end of the day, that's why it's the best show ever. Not because it's perfect, but because it dared to find perfection in imperfection. It didn't just entertain, it reshaped television. Without Seinfeld, the DNA of modern sitcoms would look completely different. And maybe that's Seinfeld's greatest achievement. It proved that everyday life, with all its awkward pauses and ridiculous details, could be just as captivating as any grand love story or epic drama. It showed us that comedy doesn't need to reach for something bigger. Sometimes the funniest, most relatable thing is right in front of us. That's not just clever writing, that's genius. Now, I want to hear from you. What's your pick for the greatest sitcom ever? And why? Drop it in the comments. See you in the next Couch Bingers.